I think we're just waiting on Fartun, is that right? Okay. All right, we'll go ahead and start then. Welcome to the October 27th meeting of the Human Rights and Relations Commission. This meeting is being held electronically to comply with the Governor's Stay Safe Minnesota order and to ensure the safety of all residents and staff. All members of the HRRC and staff are participating from their homes or offices. For members of the commission, please remember to mute your microphone when you are not speaking and raise your hand if you would like to speak. We ask that you do not use the chat function in WebEx as we meet unless you are having technology issues. We will have roll call votes for each motion this evening as well as for adjournment. I will ask Risi Karim to roll call after each motion. I will repeat the motion for the record before we vote, and will also repeat who made the motion and seconded. We will have a full agenda again tonight, so please remember those watching, listening in, and your fellow commissioners, and let's try to stay on topic. Before we begin, there are a few things I'd like to cover for those listening in or watching online. The public had two ways to view the meeting tonight. They can watch the live stream on the city's YouTube channel or listen via phone using the WebEx call-in number. There is no community comment during the meeting tonight. The city is committed to hearing and receiving your input on matters. The public can send in comments to the City Council or HRRC through the Council Correspondence web form on our website. The recording of the meeting will also be available to watch on the city's website tomorrow. Go to watch a meeting, the link under the I Want To tab on the homepage. Thanks in advance for your patience as we work to conduct this meeting online using different software types and people all participating from their own homes. We hope there will not be any issues, but assured that we will do our best to continue the meeting as best we can if there are any glitches. Thank you to everyone tuning in tonight for your interest in the HRRC and our work in the city. So, okay, so we're ready for the call to order, the roll call. Fellow Kareem, would you do the roll call, please?
Chair Behringer.
Here.
Commissioner Ishmael. Commissioner Ross.
Here.
Commissioner Felton.
Here.
Commissioner Epstein.
Here.
Commissioner Nelson.
Here.
Commissioner Edwards.
Here.
Commissioner Brett Stringer Moore.
Here.
Student Commissioner Lichtenberger.
Here.
Student Commissioner Misra.
Here.
Student Commissioner Boren. Okay, we are good to go. That concludes roll call.
Okay, thank you. So next on the agenda is the approval of the meeting agenda. Do we have any discussion about the agenda tonight? Do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
I'm sorry, who said that? Oh, Commissioner Ross. And do we have a second?
Second. Mark.
So we have a motion to approve the meeting agenda from Commissioner Ross and a second by Commissioner Felton. Fellow Kareem, will you take the roll call?
Behringer.
Aye.
Commissioner Ross.
Aye.
Commissioner Felton.
Aye.
Commissioner Epstein.
Aye.
Commissioner Nelson.
Aye.
Commissioner Edwards.
Aye.
Commissioner Stringer Moore.
Aye.
Student Commissioner Lichtenberger.
Aye.
Student Commissioner Mirza.
Aye.
That concludes roll call.
All right. And the motion passes. So next on our agenda is the approval of the meeting minutes from September 22nd. Do we have any discussion about the meeting minutes? So I think I saw one small typo in section 5, section A. Chair Behringer asked the new student commissioners to be plural.
I'll make note of that.
Okay. So, okay, do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Okay, so I have a motion to approve the minutes by Commissioner Nelson and a second by Commissioner Stringer Moore. Fellow Kareem, can you take the roll call?
Chair Behringer,
Aye.
Commissioner Ross,
Aye.
Commissioner Felton,
Aye.
Commissioner Epstein,
Aye.
Commissioner Nelson,
Aye.
Commissioner Edwards,
Aye.
Commissioner Stringer Moore,
Aye.
Student Commissioner Lichtenberger. Aye. Did she say aye?
Aye, yes,
Okay.
sorry.
Student Commissioner Mizra,
Aye.
I don't think they technically vote, do they?
No,
you know. Oh.
Yeah.
they can vote, but it doesn't go into the record.
Yeah.
So. Okay, so the motion passes, and then we're moving on to special recognitions and presentations, and we have a special guest with us tonight. Andy Lewis is here to talk about racial covenants and housing accessibility and how to look for in your deed if you own a home, if you have a racial covenant in the deed, and how to remove it. Welcome, Mr. Lewis.
Thank you very much. And I'm realizing as soon as I said everything is working on the technology side that it doesn't let me share my PowerPoint on the screen. So I'm going to try and to talk on one screen and run the PowerPoint on the other one. Hopefully that works.
Andy, I can share it, and then if you just want to prompt me when you want me to go ahead and go to the next slide, I can do that from my end. Okay.
That works.
Okay.
This is loading over here in true work from home fashion. There's like 3 screens here, and hopefully one of them works at any point in time. Well, again, thank you for having me. I think this might actually work.
Let me. You see, it's not letting me share a screen. It's only allowing me to share a whiteboard.
I see the same thing. The share button is blocked out on both of mine.
Okay, just 1 second for me.
Well, we figure that out. I can explain a little bit of what I'm hoping to share and how I got here. It might be a good introduction while we get the technology to work. So, I wanted to bring the work of a number of people to this group today, and a little bit about how I am involved in this is I am certainly no expert in this content. I am a citizen of the city and not much more than that. But in the aftermath of George Floyd's killing, I thought that I wanted to do something and I wasn't really sure what. And thinking maybe some of you have maybe heard of the Mapping Prejudice project that's run out of the University of Minnesota, that is predicated on the notion of identifying racially restrictive covenants on people's property deeds and identifying them and raising awareness of the history of those across originally Minneapolis that moved to Hennepin County and then has expanded even into St. Paul beyond that. And so I was familiar with that beforehand, and having lived in the city for a couple of years now, was sort of tangentially aware of some of the history of racially restrictive covenants in Edina specifically, and felt like that could be a place where personal interest mixed with being a resident of the city could be a place to start in terms of helping people understand maybe how we've gotten to the place that we are, maybe some of the root causes of systemic racism, and figure out how could we either raise people's awareness that these have existed, and maybe also figure out how could we do something about helping homeowners who have them affiliated with their property do something about that. So I'm not sure if you've figured out the sharing yet.
Still working on that right now. Sorry about that.
No problem. So maybe I'll ask this as I get started, is everybody aware in some form or fashion of what racially restrictive covenants are in general?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
so part of my perfect. So part of my reason for asking that is, like I said, I might keep the presentation here, though it's fairly lengthy, tailored fairly narrowly to what this initiative is, which we've called Just Deeds, and maybe spend a little bit less time on the deep history of restrictive covenants, simply because you may be better off having Kirsten Delegard or somebody from that initiative come present. I know that she has presented to the Affordable Housing Group in Edina before. So being new to presenting in these forums, I'm not so sure how much crossover there is between the two groups. But she and anybody on her team at the University of Minnesota certainly would be well versed to teach you really all of the history and all of the background here. So if you want to move to the next slide, there are a number of examples that we have here in terms of what is a covenant. There are lots of examples of them. This is one particular one, but fundamentally, an exclusion on somebody's property that says a certain segment of the population cannot own this property or cannot live on this property. So if you move to the next slide, these were put in place somewhat throughout the course of these variety of housing practices dating back all the way to 1862, but ultimately culminating in sort of the combination practice of racially restrictive covenants along with redlining that was then done in terms of how people finance their housing, leading to some of the housing segregation that you've seen today. And if you move to the next slide, there's a couple of more examples here of just what some of these look like. And if you're familiar with these or you've seen these before, they may not be particularly notable to you, but I think for maybe somebody who's never seen this before or wasn't familiar with this, either in general or that this existed in our own community or in our own surrounding communities, I think just seeing them on paper and in practice can be fairly powerful and explains a little bit of maybe how some of our communities were built in the way that they were. So if you want to move to the next slide, I think this has been well documented on, and probably thanks much to the work of this group and others in the city here around the history of these covenants. And I've read a lot, seen a lot in terms of how well documented the history of these are here in Edina. I think, you know, a lot of that has sort of centered around the Country Club District, but as you'll see in a couple of slides further, there are other places throughout the city that still have these deeds affiliated with their property. Some of them are even city-owned parcels of land, from what we can tell, that we may want to consider addressing or doing something about as a part of this initiative. So part of this is history. Like I said, you'd be probably better served doing a deep dive into the history of it with somebody from the initiative. But if you're unfamiliar with it, it gives you a little bit of a sense of sort of where these came from, when they came into prominence, and how they started to shape communities in the 30s and 40s. So if you want to move to the next slide. And you should be able to press play down towards the bottom. And this is intended to cover Hennepin County, but gives you a little bit of a visual sense of sort of where they started, how they grew. And I have a different slide that just shows you a different view of how they ended up and where they have been identified specifically within Edina. But I think the visual here is powerful just to show where are these concentrated, where are they concentrated relative to the various communities, and what does that mean for purposes of diversity? What does it mean for purposes of inclusion? And you can see maybe where some of this was more pronounced across the county in some segments versus others. So this will probably keep playing for a while, but you can move to the next slide. So here's an example of one in Lake of the Isles, and for purposes of this, for this committee, the next slide has one that we actually found that was in Edina. I think this one was in the Tingdale neighborhood, if I remember correctly. If you move forward one slide. So I highlighted the text in here. It's hard for me to read this late in the day, but and no person or persons other than of the Caucasian race shall be permitted. And so one of the members of our working group here found this one for us, found a handful of other ones, but this was one that was specifically here. And I cut this map out of the Mapping Prejudice site, but it gives you a sense of where, as a part of their project, they've identified properties that have had racial covenants. Obviously, there's a big block of them in Country Club, but it's certainly not exclusive to there. You can see quite a few of them in Pamela Park, and then sort of in a variety of other places there. So it gives you a sense of it. And to my point earlier, interestingly, even some of the ones that you see there in Pamela Park appear to be literally in the middle of Pamela Park. So something I might, ask of this group or of the city too, is if there's an interest in having those removed from city-owned properties, if we can confirm that those are in fact the case. Obviously, the city owns and controls the property, but it might not be a bad gesture to do just to remove that from anything that is affiliated with the city specifically. So if you want to move to the next slide. So probably stating the obvious, these aren't enforceable today. The previous illustration I showed ended in 1953 for a reason, because they were outlawed by the legislature in 1953, and then made officially illegal as part of the Fair Housing Act in 1968. But a little bit of what brings us today, in addition to what I said earlier, is the legislature passed a law in 2019 allowing for property owners to discharge them from their property, which is a little bit of a segue into what brings me here and what brings us to the Just Deeds project. If you want to go to the next slide. Well, maybe the one after that. It's always good to have the visual, but we can keep going. So this is a lot of text, and probably says in more words what I said earlier on, which is, I think bringing the history of what these were, how they shaped the development and building of communities, Edina being one of them, but a lot of neighboring communities, Minneapolis as well, I think helps illustrate to people maybe some of the really, really deep down things that are long since passed, but have maybe led us to some of the disparity in wealth outcomes, disparity in educational outcomes, disparity in why one city is built a certain way, others are built a different way. And the hope here, I think, is in addition to the actual practice of helping people remove these from their property if they're on their property, is that this is almost one of the most fundamental things that maybe led us to where we've been over the past 6 months. And whether this is the starting point for all people, obviously I and none of us are in any position to say, is this the jumping off point for any one person or community to understand the history of the community in which they live? Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. This was a thing that resonated for me and a thing that really helped in my own personal journey. And maybe it helps for other people. And I think at a minimum, if we give people the opportunity to explore this and maybe do something about it, if it is something that is affiliated with their property, that can only be a good thing. And if people do no more with it, then so be it. But if it's the starting point for their exploration into how to make our city and community more equitable, then all the better. So if you want to move to the next slide. This is the law that I referenced earlier. It's probably a good pivot into saying, so why is this so complicated? Most of the time, I think, people don't often spend a lot of time dwelling on their property deeds. Maybe they do when they're buying a house, maybe they do when they're selling a house, but I tend to think probably not a lot of folks are otherwise spending their free minutes, especially in these uncertain times, thinking about the status of the deed to their property. So it's not top of mind for people, and it's complicated. It's a legal document, and people may not know where it is, how to find it, and what to do about it. So if you move to the next slide, this gets us a little bit to what this group is. And like I mentioned up front, I play no role in the in the doing of this group. You will hear a lot about lawyers. You will hear a lot about people in the real estate business. I am neither of those. Like I said, I'm an interested citizen who was fortunate enough to get connected to this group by literally sending an email to the Mapping Prejudice site. And they didn't happen to have anybody who was having this conversation in Edina, so here I am. But what the project is, and the group is not registered as a nonprofit. We own a domain name, but we don't have a website yet. There's just a group of interested people who are sort of working on it in their spare time. But the intent of the group is to, in partnership with local communities, help people identify if they have a racially restricted covenant on their property, and if they have one and want it removed, provide people with the services that are necessary to do that at no cost to them, which would otherwise be both complicated and expensive. Anybody who's bought or sold a house, that's expensive. Anybody who's talked to an attorney, that's expensive. So if we can get people to understand that these are out there and take an interest in it, we don't want cost or complexity to be the barrier to somebody removing this from their property if that's something that they're interested in doing. So you'll see some of the groups that are involved. These are all groups that are mostly new and foreign to me as somebody who, again, is not a real estate person or an attorney. But I would say a lot of the enthusiasm and a lot of the progress in this project is driven out of this group called the Minnesota Association of City Attorneys. So I'll get to this in a few slides, but Golden Valley has really led the way in this. Their own city attorney is a part of this group and has also been really one of the founding drivers of the project and initiative, and has gotten Golden Valley as sort of the first city to sign up formally for this, publish it on their website, have the city recognize it formally, and do some publicity around it. You can find some of their community television videos out there about it, that type of thing. So you'll see it sort of comes from that angle. City attorneys and the working group has done a great job as well of getting title companies, real estate companies involved as well, because not only is it, I think, important for people to be able to identify them as a part of just going about course of business, if we were to publicize this, doing that. I think back to my personal experience too. Like I said, I moved to Edina about 2 years ago, and when I sold our house in South Minneapolis, I did not know this until 6 months ago. That house has a racially restrictive covenant on it. And what would have been a better opportunity for us to raise that and have that removed as a part of that real estate transaction? So not only is it about saying, if it is on your house personally today, how can we help that go away? But also raising awareness so that as part of every real estate transaction, real estate agents or title companies or real estate attorneys can also be aware of this to look for it and do it as a part of that transaction. Because like I mentioned earlier, I don't think people are often looking at stuff like this on a day-to-day basis. So if you want to move to the next slide. I mentioned a lot of this is about education, and I think that the action of having it removed is important for people who want to have it removed. I think that gives us a tangible thing to be able to do, something to say a benefit that this group is providing to people if Edina is interested in participating and advocating for it, that we can say, it's not just general education, right? If you want to be educated about racially restrictive covenants, we can post a link to Mapping Prejudice on the city's website, and that's going to give you all the education you could possibly want. But hopefully for connecting it to people more personally, they can look at it through the lens of their own property, their own neighborhood, and help them with an understanding of maybe how things were shaped, in addition to being able to do something if it's affiliated with their property, we think is helpful. And beyond that, if we can help there, great. If people choose to take that further forward in terms of exploring how land use and these things then shaped other parts of the community, then that's great. I would assume that that's probably part of the work of this group. But we're trying to keep this a little bit narrow in this regard to do a really good job at this piece of it. and also maybe not bite off more than we're qualified to do. So if you want to go to the next slide. There's a couple of slides here that say what can the city do, and it really comes down to, I guess, answering the question, is this a thing that the city thinks is time well spent and wants to maybe not publicize in a super out there manner, but to say, we think this is a good thing. We think this is a thing that our city wants to be a participant in. We think it is a good action to take in terms of addressing some of the causes of systemic racism, and that the city would be willing to be a participant in making our members of the community aware of it and pointing people towards the work that this group is doing. I think there is there's really just a request here to be a handoff point between residents of the city who may be on the city's website, may listen to meetings like this one or other meetings, city council meetings, whatever it is, hear about this, go to the city's website, find information about it, and then whether it's this group or some other part of city administration that maybe I'm not familiar with, be a conduit to this working group who can do the work of removing covenants from people's properties if they're interested. So if you want to go to the next slide. A lot of the things here, I think, are things that I would guess this commission does independent of my little presentation here. So this would maybe just be one small part of the charter of this commission in terms of having conversations about where we are in terms of race and equity and inclusion, and helping educate our community about where we're doing well at that, where we have work to be done, what we can do better, how we've gotten to where we are. And really, I think in addition to just signing up for it, the city via a city council meeting or otherwise being able to say, we recognize this group, we think what they're doing is a good idea, and we support it and we will publicize it would be, I think, a really good outcome from our perspective. If you want to go to the next slide. So, like I mentioned before, Golden Valley is a full-fledged, active, ongoing, like signed on the dotted line participant. Robbinsdale is also in the same spot. St. Louis Park is somewhere in between. They've heard a version of this presentation and are somewhere in between having been made aware and signing up to be an advocate for it. And versions of this presentation have also been given to Richfield and Minneapolis as well, but both of them are probably about in the same spot that we are here. So just to give you a sense, certainly not all neighboring communities, not all of the communities that had those blue dots sort of show up on the map are current partners here, but we're making progress. We have people involved from a number of communities here that the Minnesota Attorneys Group obviously has inroads into lots of different cities in Hennepin County and beyond. But for now, we're just sort of starting with ones that we have inroads in. And given the history in our city particularly, it felt like there's history with it here. And I hope and think, and we'll probably pause on this note, that this goes to raising awareness and helping provide tangible outcomes for people and a thing people can do without maybe opening up all of the history that has gone on in the past that probably predates my time being involved in this, and making it more than what it is. So in short, I'll wrap by saying, one, I appreciate the time. Two, we just ask if this group would be interested and willing to advocate for the work that the Just Deeds group is doing and bring that forward out of this commission to the city council if you feel that it is good work. We would appreciate that, but I'll stop there and see if there are any questions that I can answer.
Andy, thank you for your presentation, by the way. That's excellent. And I think it's amazing that you volunteer and do all that you're doing. And you may have touched upon this and I missed it, but what exactly is the role of the title companies? And why has there not ever been legislation that says whenever a title company is responsible for signing over a deed, they just get rid of these?
It's probably couple of levels beyond my pay grade, but I think the amount I know about that is what I said before, which is I think the initial goal is to have them be present and willing to volunteer their time and effort where it crosses over from attorney land into real estate transaction land. And I'm not a real estate agent, right? I know I signed a whole bunch of papers when we moved here. Some of them were legal things, some of them were real estate things. I think that was the starting point, but I don't know the question as to why, if we passed this act in 2019, did we not make it that simple?
Jim, do you want to respond?
Yeah. Well, I am a real estate lawyer. I practiced real estate law for 40 years.
Oh my gosh, did I say something that was illegal? I'm really sorry.
That's all right.
Thank you.
In fact, the title companies do issue, when they issue their policies, and have for as long as I practice law, I believe, their policy always never refers to racial covenants, except by saying, if there are any, we will ensure that they are not enforceable. So that's right on your title policy.
But in
So
that
it's a bold
circumstance,
statement that just says it's not enforceable.
I'm sorry. I repeat that, please.
So it's a very bold statement, but it's a bold statement just stating that it's not enforceable. It's not a bold statement of saying we're going to remove them as part of the transaction.
Well, I mean, this is. I think that this is a wonderful opportunity for education, and I'm glad you're doing this. But from a real estate perspective, the racial covenants are historical documents, and they're nothing more. Okay. There hasn't been a racial covenant in a deed that I'm aware of in 60 or 70 years. And those are historical documents, and they aren't going away. They're going to be there. You actually have to go looking for them. And you have to do work to find them because they never show up on title policies anymore. So I just question whether it's really worth the time and effort when there's so many other things to do, except from the educational standpoint, I think, because it does impact today. It impacts the availability of property up to this very day. I mean, both in Edina and elsewhere. But in fact, they are unenforceable, and they're whatever you. I just looked at that statute you cited. I hadn't seen that before. It was passed after I retired, but nonetheless, and I don't want to dominate the conversation because I'm not criticizing you by any means or trying to diminish what you're doing. I mean, those documents are going to stay there because it's just part of the historical record. They're not going to go into and rip out the microfiche of those documents. They're still there, and in fact, what you're doing when you file that affidavit that I read on the thing is you're now bringing to the fore that it does exist. So I'm just not sure of the benefit of doing anything. There's also something called the 30-year law, which says any kind of covenant isn't enforceable in Minnesota after 30 years. So these were unenforceable many, many years ago. I'm sorry. I don't want to dominate the conversation.
Commissioner Ross, did you want to say something?
I do. Yeah, I think this is really very symbolic. And to me, it's kind of like tearing down the statues of the racist past. And it's symbolic. I understand what Jim's saying. It's a permanent, you can't erase something that existed. It's symbolic, but it's very important. And I think we should follow up.
Commissioner Stringer-Moore?
Andy, you mentioned during your presentation that this was impactful, kind of helping you understand in your personal journey of understanding issues of racism and inequality and social justice in this country and in the city. I would love you to, expound on that a little bit more. How was it and why?
Yeah. Probably a good way to look at it is literally the real estate process that led us here, which was okay, why, beyond that, we had a small house and we wanted a bigger house. All right, where do we want to move to? We wanted to move to a place that had great schools because my visitor is running around in the background here. You know, one of them is in kindergarten this year. And to my point of it being a really foundational thing is the racial covenants leading to the acclamation of wealth, leading to the acclamation of property values, which leads to how our schools funded and taxed, and leading to, therefore, well-regarded, well-established schools, that I literally thought one of the reasons why we moved here was good schools. And part of the reason why the schools are good are, in some degree, I don't know if that's 5%, 10%, 50%, related to the restrictive covenants that we see here. And that was the angle that and that's literally me personally, in my reflection on this. You know, to my point earlier of, this is one small step of many steps. This is a discussion about property deeds, and I'm not sure that I'm qualified to speak on public school funding and how that is related to property values and taxation. But that's to me where it goes from here is, how do we have a full understanding of some of the things that we hold near and dear in the community of, and literally, I picked my kindergartner up from an Edina public school today, one that we think of very highly. But I wonder and personally reflect on, is her experience built on the backs of some of the stuff that I presented here? And that's a reckoning that I felt personally like I need to deal with. Hopefully that answers your question.
It does. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just want to just kind of provide a perspective through the city or through my work, is that I have had conversations with the folks from Golden Valley, as well as the city attorney from Golden Valley, to see what the process is. And so this is something that, as far as the racial covenants, how to acknowledge that. And then even as Commissioner Ross has indicated, what is that symbolic way to acknowledge, right, the history that has been in Edina. As well as thinking about that staff members are having these conversations in addition to what are some of the city-owned facilities. So we do have a listing of about 10 items or 10 facilities that have racial covenants on those that are city-owned. So we are taking a look at that as well as staff members. So just to give you an update of that. So this is something that we as staff members are looking at through the lens of race and equity.
That's great. Thank you.
Are there any other comments? Thank you so much for joining us, Andy. I really appreciated that presentation. It gives a lot of food for thought about racial covenants and housing restrictions in Edina, and how history has impacted how we live today. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much. I appreciate all of you taking the time for it. And I think Heidi has my contact information. So feel free to email me questions, whether I can answer them or not. I can certainly get them to the working group that I'm a part of. And we'd love the opportunity to do more with this if this group is interested.
I'm wondering, Heidi, could we get a copy of the PowerPoint?
Would that be okay if I shared that, Andy?
I think so.
Okay, yep, I can certainly go ahead and email that to the group.
Thank you.
Great, thanks again.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Have a good night, everybody.
Thank you,
Bye-bye.
Andy.
All right, so moving on to reports and recommendations, the 2020 Human Rights and Relations Commission Work Plan. Let's see, so Initiative 1 was postponed. That was the Days of Remembrance. Initiative 2 is the Tom Oy Award. And we are midway. We're accepting applications for nominations for the Tom Oy Award until November 9th. So that's what, two weeks? 1.5? something like that. Still have time, so please share that with your networks. Make sure that people are aware. I want to thank Sabi for helping me hang the posters. That was really nice of you. Yeah, just share. Heidi,
Do you have an update on the application amount?
I was just going to ask Heidi. Have you gotten any applications?
Yep. So on the update, it does indicate that there was 5 applications that were received.
Nice. There's been a lot of good stuff happening in the city this year, so I'm glad to see so many nominations. I hope we get some more. So I know I've shared it. I've seen the city has shared it. I've shared it in a few places too. So please, if you look up where the city has it, you can just pick up that link and share it with everyone.
And then are we making the final decision at the next commission meeting, and then the award is going to be made in December? Is that the plan still? Okay.
That's correct.
Okay.
So are there any other comments on the Tom Oy Award? All right, then we can move on. Initiative 3 was the co-chair across commission HRC. Well, that was the community conversations, which has been completed. Commissioner Felton, did you want to provide an update?
Of the event that took place last week?
Yes, the October 21st event.
Right. I'm going to defer to Heidi because we had talked about this prior to this.
Oh, okay.
Right. If that's okay with you, Heidi?
Yeah, that's perfectly fine.
Okay.
So the event took place. We had the police chief as well as a sergeant from the police department. We had Sabi, student commissioner Sabi Mirza was also part of the panelists, along with Arnie Bigby and Hope Melton. And we had Diedrich Neeson as a moderator, as well as Gary Bridges, who works for the Edina public schools, as well as a resident. And so it was 90 minutes long. And we had 15 minutes at the very end for questions and answer portion. And at the reach, and I did get the data for the amount of people that it was reached. So we had over 1,200 views on Facebook. And so to be able to kind of know what the algorithm that Facebook has, it depends on how long a person actually views it for them to count it as a view. So really thinking about if we had it in person versus just the virtual aspect, is that we had 1,200 views on Facebook. We had over 49 live views on Granicus, which was through the website. We had 38 views on YouTube. And so there was also some on-demand views on there. So we had a total of, on Facebook, almost 4,000 people that were reached. And what that reach is kind of just the marketing, the outreach, letting people know about the particular event. So it was very well, viewed. And I think from the conversation, whether it was the panelists or folks that participated in it, that this is something that they want to continue. So looking at what does that look like for the upcoming year. And those are probably the discussions that you as a commission will want to have once the 2021 work plan has become finalized.
All right, thanks for that update. Commissioner Felton, did you want to say something?
Yes, I wanted to, first of all, thank this committee, especially Jasmine, for her leadership. It was basically you were the one that started this, and so you were, we built on that. I also want to thank Heidi. Heidi really did a great job. She selected the moderator, and I think he did a great job, and she selected all the panelists, except for Hope. I selected Hope, but all the other panelists, Heidi did, and she just did a fabulous job, in my opinion. So I think all the credit should go to her. That was it.
I had the opportunity to watch the event, and thank you for the nice remarks, Commissioner Felton. I think it was a very robust discussion. I was very impressed with Mr. Bridges and our student commissioner. Thank you for stepping up and sharing your experience and being open and vulnerable with your thoughts. And so it was very impactful. Do we have any direct feedback from residents on the event or any questions that weren't answered during that allotted 15 minutes of Q&A?
There were some questions that were directed towards the affordable housing. So there was, or not affordable housing, but just the racially restrictive language. So kind of speaking to what Andy Lewis presented, just wanting to know what the city was doing from that aspect. There were some questions in regards to incidents that are still being investigated or that were not allotted. So I will be reaching out to those folks and answering those questions.
Any feedback or questions or people saying they want to be involved in future events?
I have not gotten that feedback as far as people wanting to participate in future events, but the streaming has already also been connected to the Better Together website, so people are able to view that, and it is still collecting comments as well. The feedback that I've received from the moderator as well as some of the panelists is that people have reached out to them after seeing that, and they were happy with the event as well as looking forward to other events.
Yeah, I think the moderator was fantastic. Just as we think about sharing it, is there an opportunity for the city to send it out via Nextdoor in one of their communications?
I can certainly check. There is also opportunities for folks to watch it on channel 813 as well as 16. So that is available until November 30th. And so it's available Monday through Saturday, about 2 or 3 times each day available.
I was just going to say that I did watch it on cable TV, so there's a large audience that you're not counting because there's no way to count those people.
Well, I watched it on YouTube, so I'm one of your numbers. I think, is there any way they can have interactive question and answers, or does everything have to be email? Do you know, Heidi?
I think that could be an option going forward. I think that since there was different levels or different modes of interaction, that it was hard to kind of cast a net as far as how we would be getting those questions in. So for this particular event, we wanted to have it go through one person so that it is able to be seen if there were trend patterns of particular questions to be able to have lump it all together.
Kind of curate it. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Makes sense. I mean, some of them were like, how many women cops are there? I mean, it's kind of interesting questions. So.
Any other comments? Commissioner Felton?
Yes, I did receive one email, at least MJ forwarded it to us, and from someone that watched it that night. If with your approval, I would like to read it. I think it's.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Thank you very much for the informative conversation. I appreciated Hope's information and passion, Arnie's integrity and heart, Gary's courage and honesty, Sabi's optimism and articulation, and Dave and David's desire to be part of this conversation. I also like to commend Dietrich, skill in drawing out participants and asking the right questions to give participants the opportunity to express themselves without leading them into saying what he expected them to say. I tell you, what I think is the hardest thing about Edina, and I am from a farming community west of here, is, and I've lived here for 39 years, I have had very few opportunities to know Black families or families of color. How do I do that? How can I create relationships with other races when there are so few to be found, without feeling like I am searching out a particular demographic, or them feeling like they have to act like me in order for us to be friends? I heard Gary's comment about that he has to be other than himself to fit in. I'm sort of like going to a prep school and never having permission to be yourself because expectations are so rigid. I wonder how the moderator feels about this. He says he loves Edina, I have been here 39 years, and I'm not sure I can say that as a Caucasian from a different culture. So this was just one example, but from what I hear, some of the panelists and of course the moderator received direct feedback from people as well. And so I think it was well received. Again, congratulations to all, everyone that's on this committee, and to especially Heidi.
Any other comments? I'd like to thank you, Commissioner Felton. I watched for a little while and I really appreciated Gary's and Sabi's participation and their sharing of their personal stories. I know that it was a lot of work to get that up and running, and I think you are underselling yourself there. I know you started a lot of conversations around race equity, just trying to reach out to people to get something going. So I really appreciate all of your efforts.
Well, thank you, Commissioner. Thank you.
All right, so let's see. So that's now completed. Initiative 4 is the art rubric, which was also completed. Initiative 5 was a Parks and Rec initiative, and that's on hold. Initiative 6 is the bias offense plan review. Are there any updates there?
Who wants to take that one? I think Michael and I have and Rick have completed our draft and sent it on to Heidi. And Heidi, I think you sent it on to the chief. Is that correct?
The last draft that Commissioner or Vice Chair Epstein had sent to their group, there was additional edits that wanted to be placed on there before that was sent to the police chief. So I'm just waiting to get back those small edits.
I think the final version we sent is is that one. So I mean that can go to the police chief because
Okay.
Rick had approved it. Yeah, Commissioner Ross. So
Okay.
And if I hadn't, I do now.
Okay, then I will go ahead and send it.
I think you have.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, so that's it for Initiative 6 then. All right, thank you. Initiative 7 was the 50th anniversary proclamation that's been completed. Initiative 8 is the Housing Task Force Comprehensive Housing Policy, but we're still waiting on receiving that.
Yep. So they will be attending to provide a more of a formal presentation to the HRC on the November 17th meeting. In addition to the Housing Task Force attending that meeting on November 17th, the Planning Commission will also be in attendance because they will also be hearing the comprehensive housing policy. That it's kind of the formal introduction to it, and then also receiving feedback. And then getting that feedback and making any edits before it's presented to council.
I see that Kat and I are the commissioners. Are we going to get that in advance, the written plan, or?
Yes, I was told that that would be sent to you, to Chair Behringer and you, Commissioner Nelson, prior, and then it would be placed in the packet for the November 17th meeting where all of the commissioners are able to take a look at it.
Okay, great, thank you.
Great, thank you. All right, so, and then Initiative 9 was also a Parks and Rec initiative. Is that on hold too?
That was the feedback that you
Oh,
as
that's
well.
okay.
Yep.
That's where that was.
Yep.
Got
Vice Chair Epstein, as well as Commissioner Edwards, provided feedback as well as questions. I have already directed that towards the park staff liaison and just waiting to hear back if what does their timeline look like and if additional feedback is going to be needed from the HRC.
Okay. Are there any comments from Commissioner Epstein or Edwards about that? Nope. All right. All right then. So then let's see, moving on, not sure where I put my, okay, so then we're moving on to the 2021 work plan.
Excuse me, Chair Behringer, I have to hop off, but I've sent you a note and Commissioner Nelson with my interest for next year's work plan.
Yep, okay,
Thank you.
see you later. Okay. All of my, oh, here we go. Too many papers. All right, so the 2021 work plan, the initiative 1 is coordinate days of remembrance. Are we attaching ourselves to these now, or are we just going through?
What I would recommend is that on the November 17th is when you would want to go ahead and just have folks decide which of those initiatives they want to work on.
Okay.
Because on the November 4th, or excuse me, not the November 4th, but the November 8th City Council meeting is when staff will provide any recommendations in addition to it. So more that particular step will be more of a formalized step.
Oh, okay. So this is not a sealed or
No.
Okay.
No. So, and then on December 14th is when City Council will approve the 2021 work plans for all commissions.
Oh, okay. So we have, should we go through it, or does anybody have questions about it? How should we proceed then, Heidi?
One thing that I would recommend is that with your initiative number 1, since that had in the past been a in-person event, and it generally was planned probably 6 or 5 months prior to it, having folks really think about what does that initiative number 1, are they wanting to participate in that particular initiative? And then what does the planning look like, so that you have, once that has been approved by City Council in December, that you would be able to start that planning process, since this is typically in April for this particular event.
Right. Okay.
And I think we've had a task, Evan, we had a task force involved in that too, so that's another reason to get going early on it, I guess.
Yep. For this
green sheet and stuff.
Yep, absolutely. For this particular work plan initiative 1, where it does, there is, in the past has been a green print, where it's asking folks from the community or a working group, as Commissioner Nelson has indicated, to be part of the planning. With COVID and kind of just not knowing what does that look like in April, the planning may have to be adaptive in a sense of what does that look like for it to be potentially a virtual event in April of 2021.
It seems likely that it will be virtual at this point, so. Okay, are there any other comments on initiative 1? So when would we would have to wait for City Council approval, so we would want to be prepared to go ahead with the green sheet in December? I
would suggest that in November, if there are folks that want to be part of the subcommittee for initiative number 1, to already have their roles defined, or say that they want to participate in that particular initiative.
Okay. And then we'll ask for the green sheet then?
Correct.
Okay. Sounds good. Maybe we should just go through it all quickly then. Initiative 2 is the Tom Oy Award. Are there any questions about that? All right. Initiative 3 is Sharing Values, Sharing Communities event. Are there any comments or questions about that? And then initiative 4 is Race, Justice, and Policing Community Awareness Plan and Implementation. Okay, initiative 5 is the Bias Offense Plan and Review, and meeting with the police department quarterly for updates. And then initiative 6 is a review and comment on a plan developed by the Parks and Rec and what's R&E?
Race and Equity.
Oh, okay. Not used to seeing the and, I guess. R&E staff to identify barriers for participation and reach communities of color through different modes and feedback, determine how data would be used. So any comments or questions about that? All right.
So if you're looking at the 2021 work plan, out of the 6 items that are currently on the work plan, you have one item that the completion date is April 2021. You have one item that is tentatively there for completion of October 2021. And all the remaining items that you have, the remaining 4 items are December of 2021. So you have a little bit more leeway for those remaining 4, and as well as initiative number 3.
The October one was the sharing values one?
Yes.
Okay. Commissioner Epstein?
I was just going to ask Heidi, do you have a sense of how the city's planning things next year? How far out they're going virtually versus in person, or is that all over the board?
It's in compliance with the governor's orders. So in a sense, if the governor has indicated that in-person meetings can be conducted, then we will go ahead and adapt to it. So we don't really have a time frame of that. But
I just meant, like, if there's a big event in the city next year in March or April or May, have those been canceled yet, or have they? Okay.
No, they have not.
Thank you.
But there are numerical limits, right? Hasn't the governor, or actually the whole COVID framework says X number of people, right?
Oh, for sure. Right now there are all kinds, but I was just wondering if they're, kind of have projections or not. So
I think we should look at a virtual Days of Remembrance and try to figure out structurally how that's going to work.
Yeah, I agree.
Because that's early enough in the year, that I think we could pull that off. So I hate to postpone it again. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The views of the Community Conversations October 21st event are really encouraging in terms of the Days of Remembrance being virtual as well. So.
Good.
I think that a lot of a lot of Rotary clubs, because I'm involved in Rotary, they're doing what they call hybrid, which is some people come in for live presentations and some people do it via Zoom, particularly the older people like myself that don't want to risk anything. I think the city ought to be considering, even when we can go live, also having a Zoom alternative. Just given the touches we had with the last event, suggests that we could reach a lot more people if we had it both live and on Zoom.
It's an excellent point. And it seems like a lot of events are taking place that way as well. So. Any other comments? All right, so then I guess we're moving on to chair and member comments. I just wanted to let everyone know that Commissioner Meek has stepped down. Heidi will speak more about that and how her spot would be filled. But I did want to thank her for, or acknowledge, and not thanks since she's not here, but acknowledge all of the work that she's done for this commission and for the city of Edina. She was a very invested commissioner, and we're sad to see her go. But I did want to acknowledge that she did a lot of work with GARE and so many initiatives during her time here. So we really appreciate her participation and her involvement and advocacy on behalf of the HRRC with the city of Edina. So, Commissioner Feldman?
I just wanted to piggyback on that as well, because Michelle Meeks was co-chair of the event that took place last week. And I wanted to thank her for all that she did. And so to echo your comments, there were some other people that I really probably should mention as well that were part of this committee. Mike Protaski, Hope Melton, Colleen Fahey, and Katie Oberly, and Joni Bennett, who provided some direct assistance to me. But Chief Nelson and Sergeant Vinny were part of the committee. And they're very busy people. For them to take the time to be on this committee, to be involved, meant a lot to me, and it meant a lot to this city. So thank you.
Thank you for that. We'll continue on with member comments then. Commissioner Ross?
I do have two comments. First, I wanted to congratulate Mark on a fantastic presentation. I watched the whole thing, and it was very enlightening. I learned a lot, and I think it was a very positive experience. So thank you for putting that effort in. Second, I wanted to note that our own Jasmine was recognized recently in the Edina magazine. I don't know if you can see, but there was an article in which she was featured, and a very interesting piece about her background and her work. So I'm sorry she's not here to hear this, but I thought it was a really nice article. So there you have it.
Commissioner Edwards?
Yeah, I'm kind of speechless tonight. So, yeah, I miss Ruth Bader Ginsburg. I think I've said that last time, and I'm kind of crestfallen as our courts go forward. But, you know, hopefully my marriage will survive.
Commissioner Epstein?
Well, it's hard to follow that. We all hope it will. Of course it will. I also want to echo a lot of what Commissioner Ross said. I saw the event, and I thought it was excellent. And so great job to the whole committee, and especially you, Mark. And also, Jasmine's been featured in MSP magazine last month and some other publications as well. So it's great that she does that, and she always mentions some of the work that she does with the Edina, which is great. So thank you.
Commissioner Nelson? Jim?
Commissioner Nelson, I think you're on mute.
Oh,
Oh.
hold on.
I unmuted you, Commissioner Nelson. You're good to go now. Oh, 1 second.
That's too bad. I had some brilliant comments to make too, but I'm not going to repeat them, of course. I will say that I really appreciated the work that went into the event. Also, I did watch and listen to the entire thing, and I thought it was really very well done. So kudos to you, Mark, and kudos to you, Heidi. I did want to mention one other thing, which is we have an ex officio seat on what is called the Edina Community Council, which is, I don't know how to summarize it. I can send some information out, but Cav is on it, actually representing the senior community services, and it's basically it describes itself as to be a catalyst for Edina community efforts to strengthen individuals and families. I'm just reading this now, and we're the governing board for the Edina Family Services Collaborative and Advisory Council for the Edina Resource Center. So we have people from the Edina schools, community ed, the city health officer, the Edina police, the library, the Bloomington Health Department, which works with the Edina, and so forth. Not a lot of work involved. We meet 5 or 6 times a year on a Monday afternoon. And the point of my raising this is I've done this for 2 years now. I think it's time probably for somebody else to step in and take over. My term is up in March of next year, and whether I'm going to re-up, have to be reappointed to this, I'm not sure yet. So I'd love to have somebody else take over. Heidi, I'll send you a little bit more information. Maybe you could circulate it to the commission members, and I'd love it if somebody would step up and say, yeah, I'll do it. So that's all I have.
I did want to echo what Jim was saying. I am on it as part of Senior Community Services, which is where I work. It's a really interesting thing to be a part of. It's mostly focused on Edina Public Schools and how they get this extra funding. It's kind of a weird thing. some sort of state regulation. But the people are really interesting and the conversations are really interesting. So I highly recommend it.
Yeah, I've been on it 2 years and I still don't quite understand how that funding works. I guess I never will.
All right. Commissioner Lichtenberger, did I say that right?
Yes, you did.
Sorry, half your name was hidden and I was just gonna gun for it.
I do have a long name, so yeah. I don't have too much to say. I think I remember last meeting I mentioned my club of Vanilled. So we finally got that more up and running, and I'm excited for the future. So, yeah.
Student Commissioner Mirza?
Yeah, all right. One thing I did want to say is from the 2020 work plan, I think Initiative 4, it was a rubric through the Art and Culture Committee. And I actually got to use that at school this week because I'm part of a club that's starting a student picture wall thingy. And we get to use a rubric. So that's fun to see like what we get to use from the past, like what the commission's done in the past and what impact it has. And then I also think that the panel that I was on last week was a really informative thing. And I really hope that we can do that again because I honestly learned a lot from hearing everyone's perspectives. And I thought it was a great thing that everyone needs to watch at some point because it was really informative.
That's great. I know that, Commissioner Felton, did you want to go ahead?
Just one more thing. I don't know if anyone had a chance to see Sabi on the panel, but he was really poised and really articulate. And I was impressed. My wife watched it. She said she was really impressed. And she even said that she expected great things from you in the future. And I know, Francisca, your day will come as well. You'll have an opportunity to show us who you are and how great you are. But I just wanted to mention Sabi. And I forgot to mention Carolyn Jackson was also part of the planning committee. That's it.
Yeah, great job, Sabi. I know Commissioner Ismail is with us. I'm not sure if she's able to talk. So, Martina, are you there?
Yes, sorry, I'm driving, but it looks my internet's kind of steady now. I just want to thanks to all of you guys for doing all the work, and I gather a little glimpse of the event on the Facebook as I was helping my family wedding that I was organized there. I didn't get enough time to watch the whole thing, but I will look back and watch the whole thing. But thank you so much, Felton and Jasmine and all of you and your own input for that, because it's something that all the community needed to hear, and it was a healing for a lot of people that have had that going on and have seen so many trauma in our community. So thank you so much.
All right. So staff comments?
So a couple things. So as Chair Behringer indicated, Commissioner Meeks did resign. Her resignation was on September 27th. That did appear on the city manager's Friday reports that Friday of that week. And so we will not, her commission role will not be filled because if it is the very first 6 months of the calendar appointment, then we would have had a reappointment for that. So for example, commissioners are appointed the March of every calendar year. So from March until August, or excuse me, September, if they are within that time frame of their first 6 months, they would be reappointed. However, that particular resignation was after that 6-month period, so we will not be reappointing. We will just be leaving her role vacant until the next reappointment, which will be the following March 2021. So I do want to echo everyone's sentiments as far as thanking Commissioner Meek for her work. I know that she has done a lot of work through the Race and Equity Task Force and the GARE, as well as the Human Rights and Relations Commission. So really some of the things that I have worked with her was the arts rubric that Student Commissioner Mirza talked about, as well as other pieces, and just her advocacy for folks for human rights in Edina. So I do want to echo that. And then lastly, with the community conversation, I just wanted to thank folks that were part of that planning, as well as their engagement for folks, as well as staff members who were part of that planning to be able to provide support. So folks from our communications department, as well as our fellow Reese Kareem and community engagement, MJ Lehman. So really thinking about folks, from all different parts of the community and the city work together to make sure that this was a successful event, as well as Commissioner Felton for your input and helping ensure that we get engagement from you and providing your input so that this is successful. Thank you.
Reese, did you have anything?
No, I did not.
Okay. All right, then do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
I'm sorry, who? Can you raise your hand? Okay. All right, so I have a motion to adjourn from Commissioner Ross. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, I have a second from Commissioner Felton. Fellow Kareem, can you do the roll call?
Yes, ma'am. Chair Berenger,
Aye.
Commissioner Ishmael. Take that as a yes. Commissioner Ross,
Aye.
Yeah, she's muted.
Commissioner Felton,
Aye.
Commissioner Epstein,
Aye.
Commissioner Nelson,
Aye.
Commissioner Edwards,
Aye.
and the motion carries.
All right, the motion carries. We are adjourned. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Stay well.